Welcome to the Korea Pro Podcast, your weekly guide to understanding the most pressing and complicated developments shaping South Korea. We're your hosts, Jeongmin Kim,
John Lee,
and Joon Ha Park of Korea Pro.
Go beyond headlines as we explain not just what happened, but also what really matters and why it matters.
If you monitor South Korea for work or just trying to keep up, you're in the right place.
This is the Korea Pro Podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Korea Pro Podcast. It is now Thursday, August 7th. It is a little bit past 4 p.m., and boy, do we have a lot of strong presidential comments coming out after quite a string of fatalities that we saw over the past couple of weeks.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that all of the major, especially logistics companies and others will be watching this very, very closely. Let's start with the comment regarding industrial disasters. Let's start with SPC and POSCO. What did Lee say and what are the follow-up measures?
Okay, so we have to begin with what happened 2 days ago, August 4th actually. On August 4th, there was an incident at POSCO ENC where, because we're not exactly sure what exactly happened, investigators are still looking into it, but what eventually ended up happening was that one of the workers, a man in his 30s from Myanmar, had been electrocuted. He has not been awake yet. He's still unconscious. But this was the latest in a string of incidents that happened at that company. Just this year alone, 4 people have died. And that's just at POSCO. Now, if we count the number of people who've died while working this year, there's quite a lot within the delivery service workers. At least within the first half of this year, 10 people died. And in May, at SPC, another person had died. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with SPC, SPC is the parent company of Paris Baguette. And now Paris Baguette, for those of you who have been keeping up with the news, in 2022 and 2023, 2 people died in very gruesome ways when they were somehow caught in those factory machines. And in May, it happened yet again.
And the patterns were similar as well during nighttime.
Exactly. And so Lee Jae-myung has been president since June 4th. And although SPC happened a month before he became president, this is still definitely something that's on his mind. And he has said repeatedly, even during the campaign, even during his inaugural address, and since becoming president, that industrial accidents is something that he wants to finally clamp down on.
Right. And although he has been dialing down a little bit on showing his initial political identity as a former factory worker, it is creeping up very, very quickly, actually.
Yeah, that whole centrist conservative thing. Now, to be fair to the president, he is still being a centrist conservative on certain topics.
Most of the things like geopolitical aspects, domestic political aspects, or
even trade.
Even trade. But when it comes to labor and industries related aspects, it's different.
He's pivoted right back to traditional Democratic Party stances.
And further, to a certain extent.
Definitely further, because on July 29th, we saw this cabinet meeting, which was broadcast live.
Yes, it was a big one.
It was a big one. And the phrase that he used was quite jarring for a lot of people to hear. What he said was that if there are these kinds of repeated deaths happening under the same circumstances, that means that these deaths are being tolerated by the corporations, and that, quote unquote, legally speaking, this could be classified as murder by negligence. So this is something that's going to be ringing alarm bells all across Korea INC.
Yeah.
But that's the bit of a catch. Right now, the administration is going all out against corporations, saying if you're not going to take care of your workers, we are going to punish you.
Make sure that you pay and not a one-time thing is the catch.
Yeah. Just yesterday, after the whole POSCO fiasco happened, President Lee Jae-myung told his officials, saying that I want you guys to come up with all legally viable methods to punish POSCO, including the revocation of its licenses and its ability to bid for public projects. Now, this is
It's very, very big. You almost swore just now,
it's
right?
It's huge. And so POSCO immediately started to respond. The former CEO resigned. They found a new emergency measure to keep the company running. All of this is going on right now, but this is a big caveat. President Lee Jae-myung obviously has the pulse of the public. The public is very frustrated with all of these people who are dying on the job. And the president said...
Some people.
And the president said this could be murder by negligence. But the thing is, we don't live in an autocracy. Just because the president says something is illegal or something is a crime doesn't make it a crime.
But you can find a way to make it a crime.
Well, that's what courts are for. You're supposed to have a trial. You're supposed to have a judge and a lawyers and everyone else. And if the courts deem that something was a murder by negligence, for example, then we can actually start to talk about legal repercussions. But President Lee Jae-myung is not waiting for the courts. He just declared it as murder by negligence and is essentially gearing the entire administrative state to go after this corporation.
You're missing something. It's not just the court, actually. There is something that South Korean president, the administration can use in South Korea because they have a very, very strong executive power here, which is government notices. They can issue amendments or the annexes to go with the existing law to interpret certain law clauses in a different way. So that is what the government can do. And the legislative can also work on this by actually making those into addendum to the law. And let's move on to other econ-related issues in South Korea this week. Can we talk about the inflation rate a little bit, food prices? There were also new numbers regarding the South Korean government's claim about how the cash voucher was such a great idea.
Okay, so according to what the official numbers are going, and by official numbers, I'm talking about the Bank of Korea and the Korea Development Institute, they're all saying pretty much the same thing. Overall, inflations are at 2.0%. If you're talking about including things like food, there's a 2.1%. And so 2.1% makes it a little bit higher than what the BOK is comfortable with, but it's still manageable. But what the government is saying right now is that because of the cash vouchers that started going out to people on July 21st, I believe it's $5.8 trillion, or if you want to change it to US dollars, $4.2 billion. The government is saying that at least half of that has already been spent and that this is going to have a cumulative effect as people start spending money and businesses start to boom and all that. But okay, that's the multiplier effect, sure. But typically, a multiplier effect works when people are making money and spending money. But this cash voucher is a one-time thing. This multiplier effect is not permanent. By definition, it cannot be permanent.
It could trigger a move, but it's not going to be permanent per se.
At all.
And let's move to, speaking of the momentum, let's talk about just very quickly about exports and tariff. What were the implications of the U.S. tariff negotiation? Is it actually showing that the initial discussion phase, or whether or not we will get the 25% or 15% if it actually hit the export numbers?
Well, first we have to presume that the 15% tariff rate that was agreed upon is going to stick. But
That's a big if, by the way.
It's a huge if. But if it does stick, what the Korea Export-Import Bank said was that according to their projections, they expect South Korea's exports to fall by 3 to 4% during the third quarter. Now, 3 to 4%, again, it's not a huge amount of a loss for the South Korean economy, but it is still a drop, especially when we're looking at numbers at the 2% inflation rate. That already shows you that South Korea's economy isn't doing all that great. One of the reasons why inflation has dropped, has remained stable, it's not because all of a sudden the South Korea's economy has stabilized a lot more. It's because South Koreans are importing less. And the fact that we're importing less means that we have less spending power, and so the economy is not all that great anyway.
Right, it's so all linked, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And lastly, on the business side, South Korea named 41 businesses for failing gender equity compliance mandates. Is this new? This is not new.
No, it is not new. The fact that women have not been hired as much as men, that's been an old practice.
But this is generally in line with what the Lee administration has been focusing on, trying to hold companies more accountable to social standards that he thinks is important. And this has been actually a big press release rather than just a notice on the website.
Which is kind of nice to see that the Lee administration is actually trying to pay back women for actually voting for them this time.
Yeah, for sure.
They listed 41 companies. And to be fair, what they were saying is that they didn't exactly have hard quota numbers as to how many women should be employed. What they had instead was that there was a rule that says that there has to be an industry average. And if your particular company cannot meet 70% of at least that industry average numbers, then your company's name gets on this list.
70% of average, it's not like a hard quota.
But just 70% of each industry that they're in.
Right, but what stood out to me was that these are for not just really big companies, but all companies above 500 people or more. Isn't this most of the companies in South Korea?
Thousands of companies would fall under that category. But yeah, there were 41 companies on this list. I was surprised to see that it wasn't all the usual suspects that I imagined that there would be. For example, Samsung Electronics was not on that list. Hyundai was not on that list.
Oh, wow. What about other conglomerates, like 5 major conglomerates?
Well, Hanwha wasn't on the list either. But some of the big companies, they were listed. Like KT was on that list. And so was SK Hynix.
Of course.
And it wasn't just Korean companies. The very big US company, GM Korea, was also on that list.
So they were including.
It's not just Korean companies. It's also including foreign companies as well.
I see.
Now, on the one hand, I do kind of sympathize with GM Korea. Now, GM Korea wasn't that... There are two kinds of quotas that they have to meet. Overall female employees and managerial female employees. Those in the corporate boardrooms.
Those are actually very different.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the female managerial roles, GM Korea actually exceeded industry standards. But when it came to overall female employees,
Which includes
people who are working on the factory floor, that was about half of the industry average.
right, because of the type of work.
Exactly.
I see.
And so the reason why I have my sympathies for GM Korea is that it's not very easy to find women who are willing to work on the factory floor to assemble vehicles, for example. But that being said, GM Korea still was only meeting half of the industry quota.
I see.
Looking to stay informed about South Korea's fast-evolving political, business and cultural landscape? Join us on Korea Pro, the go-to resource for in-depth analysis expertly curated by top-tier professionals. And now you can pick the membership level that best suits your needs, thanks to our new subscription packages. Starting at just $199 annually, you can access daily analysis and our weekly podcast. Or try our premium membership package, which offers additional perks such as executive briefings, monthly reports and forecasts, networking receptions and event opportunities, as well as much, much more. To find the best fit for you, just head to signup.koreapro.org and become a member today.
Week ahead. This week I'm going to mention weeks ahead because there is something big coming up in the next 2 weeks. Let's start with the US-South Korea joint summertime drills. This is annual. It's the biggest one that's held between US and South Korea. The Ulchi Freedom Shield is the summertime one, and the Freedom Shield one is the springtime one. Summertime one is bigger, and this is more important because this involves a lot of not just computer simulated ones, which is CPX, but also a lot of field trainings, FTX. And FTX is actually very, very important when it comes to issues like checking if South Korea is ready for OPCON transfer, for instance, if you simplify it, right? John is saying we're not. And when it comes to the FTX, just this morning, the US and South Korean side, after weeks long of conjecture whether or not they will do it, they said it's going to be postponed partially
To September.
So 20 out of 40 field training exercises will be postponed to September. And they were citing very specifically heat wave. And they were also claiming that, emphasizing that the postponement of certain field training exercises are to ensure that the quality is good rather than sticking to just August. So it's their side of the story and trying to stick the narrative to we are doing our best to maintain readiness posture. But of course, a lot of media analysts and a lot of pundits in South Korea, editorial boards, they are all interpreting this as a follow-up to the North Korean statement warning of the consequences after the summertime drills. And then, of course, Unification Minister Jeong Dong-young suggesting to President Lee that we have to actually scale it down. That's why the US and South Korean side today were using the term adjustment, not postponement, delay, or cancellation. So that was quite interesting. But when it comes to week ahead schedule, next week will likely be some of the preliminary drills that we sometimes see. and the following week will actually be the main UFS. And there's a summit next week as well. Vietnam's General Secretary will be visiting South Korea on August 10th, and he will be staying for a couple of days, and he will have a summit meeting with President Lee Jae-myung.
And that is a very important meeting. Vietnam is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, South Korea's third largest investment destination. And so that's going to be an important meeting. But if I'm not mistaken, when Donald Trump announced a 15% tariff, he said that he and President Lee Jae-myung are going to meet within the next, quote unquote, 2 weeks.
Ooh, that deadline's coming up as well.
They did not mention exactly what date they will meet, but I do recall reading domestic media outlets saying that some of them were suspecting August 12th. But again, none of this is set in stone, so we'll just have to keep an eye out on it.
August 12th. Okay, that's interesting because August 15 is actually a very big day in South Korea. It's Liberation Day. It's usually when the South Korean presidents issue a very big speech about either Japan relations, North Korea relations, or overall the sense of autonomy, which was my bet that he will probably focus on. So he does not really have much free time next week to meet Donald Trump, it seems.
But he's on vacation right now, so hopefully he's doing a lot of homework.
That is true.
And all of this information will be sent to your email inboxes by Monday at 2 p.m. via the Week Ahead newsletter. So if you want to know more, please subscribe. Have a good weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We'll brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why it matters, delivered to your inbox every morning.
If you want to stay ahead of the curve, sign up for Korea Pro to get a full package of insights, from daily expert analysis to profiles, month in review, week ahead, and more.
And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
I'm Joon Ha Park.
And I'm John Lee, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.